So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for taking the time to come and listen to this presentation. As you can see, the discussion is going to be about AV and IT, and the title says a little bit more than what I actually believe. It says the clash of AV and IT, but I don't actually think that's the way it is. So I'll start by giving you a little bit about myself. My name is Roy Salfarlie, and I work for a company called Arup. Arup is an engineering, architectural, and consultancy firm. I've been with Arup for 10 years, and before I worked at Arup, I worked in places like Barclays, I worked at Sainsbury's, and I even had a stint at Channel 4 television in UK. I've been in the industry for just over 20 years, so I've had different exposures to the world of AV. But it's not until I worked at Arup that I actually work under IT. So my presentation really is just my experience of the AV IT culture. So some of these slides I've put together is just to give us some reference points. So we all know that early AV stuff actually sat on IT networks, or we should know that it sat on IT networks. So things like, I've put up there a very old PictureTel video conference for those who are old enough to remember PictureTel. There's an early Tandberg system, and also I put up down the bottom, Question had a monitoring system called RoomView, and again, all of these sat on a IT network. The difference then was they were all siloed, so basically they weren't all talking to each other. They were just, sat on a network with an IP address, and they were working. This slide here actually comes from a colleague of mine who is a Mr. IT person, and his version of AV and IT was, is it a collision, or was it just a gentle drag? Did it happen overnight? As I said, no. AV and IT have been working together for many, many years. I think what's been happening recently is that AV equipment that sits on the IT network has to be more following IT protocols and principles. It's important that anything that sits on an IT network is secure, because in the IT world, if there's an attack and security attack, like a cyber attack or something, it can have quite a major impact on companies. And that's why sometimes people think IT have been difficult because they're demanding so much of the AV kit sitting on their network, but there is a reason for that. And us in the AV industry, or us AV people, should realize that it's not because they're trying to be difficult, but it's the risk that they're going to have to clear up if our kit has been seen to be the reason that this major incident happened. So basically, I'm trying to say that we should be embracing IT influence. Just going back a little bit, that the AV kit used to be single-purposed systems. They weren't fully integrated. But in the world of IT, what they want to do is look at systems that can easily be scaled, that can be fault tolerant. And what that means is that if you've got a processor in a room and it falls over, what is the failover? I suppose it's not so much in an individual room. It's more like a complete service. So I'm involved in video conferencing. So when we updated our old video conferencing bridges, the idea that the new service should have failover and what they call redundancy. Also, in the IT world, they want things like clustering. Clustering means that if there's anything that happens in this data center, then it fails over to the next data center. If you run out of resources, you're doing a video call, you run out of resources on this bridge, then you fail over because it's clustered into the next bridge. These are all IT principles that we in the AV world have to start to understand and work on. Virtualisation is another thing. So in the old days, you used to have a physical box, which was your coding bridge. Give it an IP address, and off you go. You configure it, and it works. The problem is, once that bridge had maxed out, you couldn't do any more calls because you'd used up the resources on that bridge. Nowadays, in the world of IT, everything sits on a server, so it's virtualized. That way, they can have automated failover, they can have redundancy, and the biggest thing that we do in IT is geographical distribution. And what that means is, if we have a call in the US, a call in the UK, a call in Australia, instead of everybody, in the old days, everybody would have to call into the UK bridge because that was the one that was hosting the call. Nowadays, everybody calls locally, so Australia will link to the Australian system, America, UK, and across the wide area network, the three will talk to each other. The experience then is better because instead of having latency, because you're connecting from the UK to Australia or the UK to America, you're actually connecting locally with one stream across. So, you know, that's just giving you examples of IT influence that are enhancing what we do in AV. Another buzzword is, or another important word is security. And again, in IT, there's things that, some of it I understand, some of it I don't, like certification. So they want to make sure that anything that's out of the box, plugged in, has certificates to make sure it's safe. It has to have, sorry, I'm struggling to read it from over there. It has to be, firmware updates. So again, that's quite important. I remember for years, you know, you put an AV box in a cupboard and you never touch it again as long as it doesn't fall over and stop working. But in the world of IT, you have to do updates because there's usually manufacturers will have fixes to bugs that may appear in the system. Also, if there's any vulnerability, the software updates is there to fix that. And again, that was always been natural in the IT world, and now more and more AV manufacturers are doing that in the AV world. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Arup's journey, to give an example of how AV and IT work together. And so this was back in 2013. We were using Cisco as our UC platform. And then the business started to think, well, you know, we want to replace our Cisco environment. Should we stay with Cisco or should we go to Microsoft? For us personally, we chose to go with Microsoft because a lot of the clients we were dealing with were also Microsoft partners. So a lot of people were using Skype for Business. So what that meant is if we also went with Skype for Business, it was easy for us to intercommunicate with them from business to business. So that was desktop sharing, that was IMing, and of course that involved video conferencing from the desktop. The challenge we had as well is that we still had a Cisco environment, so we still use Cisco endpoints in our meeting spaces, but at our desktop we were Skype for Business. Oh, sorry, Link at the time. So it was, well, how do we get the two to talk to each other? And in 2014, we did some proof of concepts with the traditional VC manufacturers. And then there was a new kid on the block, and I'm not really trying to plug them, but we went for a company called Pexip. The reason we chose Pexip was because they were actually a software vendor rather than a hardware vendor. And what that meant for Arup is that because it was going to be deployed by IT, they were more comfortable with the whole software concepts because Link It was a software that sat on a virtual machine. And as you can see down the bottom, again, this came from my IT colleague. It was easy for them to put it on VM or Microsoft Hyper-V, which are server architecture, which is what they understood. So I think Pexip was deployed in an hour in one region, and by the end of 2 days, it was deployed across 3 regions in Arup, in the UK, MEA in Europe, Australia, and Americas. And that's how quick and easy it was from an IT perspective. Other things we've been doing is updating our meeting rooms. We're trying to drive global standards. We do, as I say, Skype for Business from our desktop. Video conferencing. We are trying to standardize and make things easier for our users by introducing this one-touch dial-in. And what that means is that when the user goes into the room, they've got one button to push to join the meeting. And the way that we do this is that we have a software that can read the Exchange invite, extract the information that it needs, which is the dial-in details and a conference ID, and populate the Cisco. So it's actually reading the Skype for Business invite, extracting the information and populating the Cisco touch panel to enable you to just press that one button to join your meeting. And that's helping our users to speed up their joining meeting process. It's quite well known in the industry that you can walk into a meeting when it could take anything between sort of 5 to 15 minutes to get your meeting up and running, especially if it's a video conference meeting. Again, that time is valuable for your user, because if you don't get it up and running within a couple of minutes, if it takes 15 minutes to get it up and running, that's 15 minutes less of their meeting time, and that could have an impact on the business in general. Looking to the future, this is the bit that I'm actually quite excited about, being an AV person in an IT environment, because there's some really cool things that's happening at the moment. We know about AI, artificial intelligence. It doesn't just mean robotics. Amazon have now kindly introduced Alexa into the enterprise environments, and now there's companies out there trying to get you to talk to your meeting room. So you'll be able to go in and say, "Hi, I'm Roy Salfarlie," and the system should say, "Right, Roy, I can see you've got a meeting booked from 9 o'clock. Shall I start it for you?" We were at Cisco last week, and Cisco's already bought an AI company, and they're looking to implement this into their environment. Augmented reality is another exciting one, and that's been driven mainly by Microsoft, where you wear the glasses and you can actually have something in front of you that you can actually look at, walk around, and almost touch. For my environment, VR is more relevant to us in the engineering architectural world, because VR is more kind of immersive. And what we're trying to do is, when we do a job for a client, we try to make them feel that the design we're doing, they can actually be in there. And what our BIM engineers do is they've bought Google do a little cardboard VR glasses. I think they cost something like £12. Arup have bought, I think, something like 1,000 of them, branded them as Arup. And when we're doing a job for you, they will deliver they'll send out the glasses with, and basically it supports your phone with a link. And I've actually tried them on myself, so you can put the glasses on. And the reason they chose Google Cardboard is that way it's iOS as well as Android, whereas most of the VR stuff is Android only, because Apple's kind of late into the game. So with the Cardboard, you can drop your iOS or your Android phone, and you can actually look around the building, and they give it to the clients and to the general contractors and everybody, so they can actually see what Arup are designing. Again, that was really fascinating. Other things we're looking at in the future is using more USB and moving away from the traditional video conferencing systems. With Arup, we're slightly different to a lot of other companies. So some companies may be a Cisco house, and they do most of their conversation over Cisco or Polycom. In Arup, because we're a services company, basically all our clients that we deal with, we have to talk to them on their platform. Can be a challenge sometimes. We have Google Hangouts. We have to talk to Amazon Chime. Obviously, Microsoft for Business is Skype for Business is easy. We have Zoom. We have Blue Jeans. I mean, the list goes on and on. But as a business, we have to talk to everybody on their platform because that's what they're comfortable with. We're their provider. We're doing business with them, so they want us to talk on their platform. So what we found is the only way we're going to be able to do that is by letting the user come in with their laptop, with their preferred client, Zoom, Google Hangout, Amazon Chime, plug in to a USB microphone and a USB camera, and off you go. Can't get it any simpler than that, and I'm happy to take any questions about that later on. But you know, this is what we're having to do to meet our clients' needs. Oh, that's it. Ended sooner than I thought. I can sit down
Thanks,
there.
Roy. You've got a lot. We need steps there, really. You've got a lot going on, haven't you? Well, we started this off. We've been following Arup for quite a long time, and for a number of reasons, really. They've been AV judges, and their use of technology has taken off like a whirlwind, really. And we've very rarely had access to their facilities, but they've taken a dramatic change in their use of technology that's been almost pioneering in the speed at which has been implemented, which raised the issue when you're almost, working within a professional IT environment that's moving very quickly. And this was untried territory when you first started using it, wasn't it?
Yes.
It's amazing how it's grown and moved along so very quickly. It's almost, you're getting to the point where you're democratizing IT, and how the hell does AV cope with that?
Yeah.
And we've seen IT working with AV really well in the higher education space, where culturally they're very aligned. But in the business world, it's much more difficult to align very different disciplines in a I suppose not that different an environment. But you seem to have done it reasonably well. Why has it worked? I mean, your IT guys gets on really well with you, and I suppose there's been an IT-defined strategy. What sort of role has AV had in it?
So
you've been swept along the wave here, haven't you?
Yeah. So from my experience in Arup, the way for IT and AV to get on is it's got to be the foundation to start with. So the company has to want the two to work together. So I'm not disputing that there is companies out there where AV and IT are just completely dispersed and they don't communicate with each other. What I'm trying to present here today, and for you guys to take away, is that if the foundation is right, AV and IT can work together. I'm lucky because my IT line manager, I actually can say I find him inspirational. He really does listen and get involved with what we're doing. He's making sure that everything he has on his roadmap to deliver. Now he looks after Skype for Business and Exchange in Arup. So he's basically the unified comms global leads, and I sit right underneath him. But everything that he has on his strategy, the AV, the meeting room, the equipment in the meeting room is part of his strategy. And without that, it wouldn't work.
So you've got engagement. That's for most of the AV professional world, the concept of engagement with IT is somewhat unpredictable beast, really.
Yeah.
Clearly, it's being driven by an overall IT strategy, is it? Which we looked at Bloomberg, didn't we? And with the guy Jeff Fairbanks, who presented a couple of days ago. He's now head of IT and he's running all AV. And of course, AV is the heart of their business, and it's a very sophisticated, fast-moving thing. So it can go either way. There is this interchange between AV and IT going on now. We didn't realise a few years ago. But it's still a delicate balance, isn't it? It depends where the requirements of the business are, and then it brings into play just how the two departments mesh with each other. And what would you say the key skill is? I mean, what does AV need to be mindful of when it's working with IT?
I think AV just needs to be able to understand that they need to work with IT. You know,
well, how do you do that?
It's easy. Well, as I say, it all comes from the actual company itself. When I was talking a bit earlier, unfortunately, in lots of companies, services are outsourced. So AV's outsourced and IT's outsourced. And if two different companies are running the IT facilities and the AV facilities, unless the business decides to get the two to talk, or the business has a management level that manages the two, that it's never going to work otherwise. Quite often, it's getting better, but AV used to sit under facilities, and IT always sat on its own. And obviously, if AV was under facilities, there was no driver. They still didn't understand that AV needs to be part, because all the kit that AV are managing, are bringing to the business, you know, as new products come out, it needs IT's involvement. So it's somehow getting that message to the business that unless you've got these guys working together in harmony, not against each other, understand, as I said at the beginning, that IT are not being difficult. They're just making sure that anything that sits on their network is safe. You know, it's not going to be a vulnerability to their network. As long as these principles are understood, then the two can work together. And it's both sides as well, you know. So again, in AV, we have to understand that our kit has to sit on a network and has to provide a level of safety, security, reliability, etc.
I mean, it's quite interesting. I used to a few years ago interview quite a lot of CIOs, and IT has become so commoditised that they're now looking for a new area to manage, because now, of course, they've got nothing to manage anymore, because now it looks after itself. And software as a service almost went that way, and you remove it from the business and there's nothing there for you to sit in your portfolio. And looking at AV, funnily enough, and the services that the company provides internally and externally for them to actually develop. And you're quite right, we're doing a piece at the moment on AV as a service. We wonder, with everything now in the cloud, how much does that remove from the core AV skill set that actually adds value to what you do? Yeah. There's a practical implication for IT, but how much does that remove from your effectiveness? I think you mentioned that, didn't you?
Well, it can have an effect on us. As we know, there's now manufacturers that are manufacturing video conferencing systems that you can just register straight to the cloud. And what that means is that then you don't really need an AV person as such to actually get involved in deployment. What you still do need, though, is an AV person to give that level of customer service, to be there should something not work. You know, if a user goes in and they're a bit worried about using the system because they don't understand it, or that's where there's an AV value. But in AV, not everybody just wants to be just a service provider. You know, I'm fortunate because my job is going out and looking at products, testing products, validating products, and then deploying it in my environment. There will be some of that, but there could be a time when everything's now going into the cloud where we're just going to be the guys that walk into the room and just make sure that the customers are happy.
So when you say that you've acquired more IT-like skills as you've gone on, I mean, you're thinking very like an IT person, the way we communicated here. It was very much like a traditional IT presentation almost, you know. You can see the AV in there, but it's like a commodity within the overall IT picture, isn't it? Is this the way we're going to go with over IP, or are we going to lose AV in all this?
Nope, it's embracing. So I still have my AV skill. I'm still, the IT guys still see me as the person that looks, you know, that understands the complexity in the meeting room. You know, if we need switches, if we need scalers, microphones, understanding echo cancellation, understanding the challenges of the acoustics in the space, understanding the lighting. my role is still driving those AV standards. So we have a global document that we give out to our business, telling them, what the room acoustic measurement should be, what the lighting levels should be. That's still very much in the AV domain, and that's still a skill set. But I also understand the IT side of it as well, to know what, on the network, and all that kind of requirements as well.
Are Avixa providing those skills? I mean, how much of a catch-up do you need to do on the networking side?
A lot of the IT skill sets are still going down the traditional IT routes. So they still want you to do Microsoft certification, or they want you to do Cisco certification. That's the only thing that's lacking is, I think, from a Avixa position, is that we need to do more networking and a bit more not to the same level as an IT person, but for the AV people to understand more about IT requirements, a bit more about security, a bit more about MPLS networks and all that kind of stuff that I get involved in, because our communication are running across, I still know the words, but I don't know exactly what they do.
MPLS, the donkey says, but it's 3 times last couple of days. Ironic, isn't it? But I mean, it's funny all this, really, because IT took a good spanking, basically, a few years ago for not really supporting the business as well as it could be. It was too technical. We're not there to keep IT going. We're there for IT to deliver what the business needs to operate or function effectively.
Yeah.
And it's ironic, actually, that we still probably control the content in AV.
Yeah.
And actually, it's coming around a bit, isn't it? That really the whole point of their life is to support the business, and that's what AV does well. I think because it has a closer connection to the business.
Yeah.
And it's exposed more. I mean, IT isn't quite as exposed as AV is.
Yeah. Chris has always said to me that the way we look at AV and IT is that in the room, my responsibility is the user's experience. So when we roll out a new room, the screen size has to be right, so the person at the back can see the content on the screen. So we have the 468 rule, etc.
Little things are really important, aren't they?
That's it. So I look after what's inside of the room. Once it leaves the room, that's IT. So if we make a video call, that's over the IT platform. If we make a telephony call, a VoIP call, that's over the IT platform. So anything that comes outside of the room, in a way, is IT's responsibility. Everything that happens inside of the room, the user's experience, is an AV responsibility. And we've I show him a lot of what's going on. Normally he comes out to this show, but unfortunately due to personal reasons he couldn't come this year. But he loves coming around with me and looking at all the AV products, and he's getting more and more. He asks lots of questions, AV related questions, to make sure that he's learning himself like I learned about IT.
Is this a new generational thing coming through? I mean, it's the IT managers have changed over the years, haven't they? Been being just siloed, that's an awful word, into having to be aware of what's going on around them in other parts of the business and the technology being developed and really evolving into what we have now, really. So, the boxes have been more commoditised. Therefore, the services you provide, you need to have more knowledge of performance levels, don't you? To make sure that box delivers. And now that's traditionally, again, another IT stronghold, making sure that the end product is delivered to the quality of the person at the other end.
Well, this is
no matter what the excuse about something not working on the network, which is a sort of excuse that we heard too much from IT.
At the end of the day, if you both work for the business, it's for both AV and IT to deliver the right service together, because it's for the business. At the end of the day, if the business can communicate properly, they can have more, they can make more money, because we're servicing clients. We're going out looking for new clients. If we find a new client and we can't communicate with them, then we don't make any money. Then the business won't survive. It's all of us. All of us provide a service to our business, and the reason we do that is so the business can be profitable, so that we can get paid.
That's a very enlightened view, that, Roy. Actually, very good. Is that the most important thing you've learned in all this? I hate asking these recruitment-like questions. You feel as though you're interviewing a new candidate.
I'm trying to find a light at the end of the tunnel.
No, you put your finger right on it, I think, there, Roy. Any questions at all? I just want to lob this chat box around. It's a wonderfully liberating experience lobbing a microphone around the room, really. Well, we got the catch box somewhere, or
I can see it on the desk.
is it? Where is
I'm
it?
hoping that, for the
We
people
just,
that,
we just like
turned
throwing
up,
it around, basically. Any excuse, really. You don't have to ask the question. Just go through emotions, you know.
I'm hoping that the people that turned up today at least find something that they
Yes.
can take away. And,
Ask something meaningful. Yeah, whatever.
It's not working. It's working. So do you find that, because obviously with the differentiation between the AV side and the IP side, obviously from the infrastructure side, do you think that the guys never the twain shall meet purely because they believe that they're trying to hold on to their investment in basically their understanding, obviously, what the services they deliver, because the IT guys do the same. So they're trying to hold on to what they do because obviously, as you say, it's about getting paid.
Yeah. So when I joined Arup, literally AV had moved from facilities to IT. The good out of that was that IT always gets a big budget.
Yeah.
And because IT gets a reasonably good sized budget, AV has more investment. When it used to sit under facilities, and I'm not here to knock facilities, they don't see the value of AV. They'll give you the really nice meeting spaces, the beautiful curtains, the lovely painting. We've had them come in and put pendant lighting in our rooms, and so we've had to move the projector out because you can't use a projector anymore. Because the most important thing was the lighting. So AV being under IT is actually a good thing sometimes because of the investment. AV now is an IT service, just the same as telephony is, as video conference is, so they treat it as another service. Our recent IT survey, unfortunately, AV was the service that struggled. And the reason that is not because of what it's because the room itself, so the experience in the room. We're an architectural company, we love big windows. Somebody has this bright idea that we should have metal walls in the room because we're an architectural company. We should be using the magnets to pin up our designs. And in the 10 years I've been in Arup, I've only seen maybe once or twice that drawings have been hung up. So that's the challenge in the space. And even though AV and IT are working with the right microphones, if the acoustics is bad to begin with, there's only so much you can do. But the investments and AV is seen as an IT service, and I'm involved in all the IT operational meetings. I sit with the network guys, the security guys, the system guys, the software, so when we push out Microsoft updates and so on, I'm part of that group. AV is at the table, and the UC guys as well.
Yeah. I mean, I can see that being quite liberating, actually, because you're in the thick of what's happening, aren't you?
Yeah.
So it's always been this dichotomy: is AV the front end for IT, and is it service? I mean, clearly I take the opposite view because I'm bloody minded. Everything is there to support IT, really, because that's ultimately, at the end of the day, it's your contact with the technology which is the most important thing, not the infrastructure. So we always have our rumbusted arguments about that little peach when we actually come to discuss it. But you need to beat up a few people. You need to change a few mindsets there, Roy, if you don't mind me saying so. Because Arup, if anything, is known for good thought leadership stuff and all these kinds of things. However, having said that, but that joke I said I nearly met a reader once because I think I know what they want to read. Until reality dawns and you're not delivering what they really want to do. You are all at the thick end of all this, so you're seeing what actually works and how real life works. We can theorise all we like. Yeah. But actually, you're at the end that has to make this stuff work. So you're seeing how it really is. So it's quite sobering to realise that, it's at least it's in the mix there. And it's an important part of it. And I think we'll have this juxtaposition that goes up and down until it settles a bit.
Yeah.
And the immediate contact environment becomes more, I suppose, automated and effective. And then we'll see where we are with it all.
Yeah. My last point is that. To get across once more, until the business realizes that because you outsource two services, you outsource IT and you outsource AV, if you don't get them to work together, your business is going to be affected. You're not going to be able to deliver the user experience in the space or the IT services, the video conferencing, the audio conferencing across, your network. You've got to... and the thing is, because if you're an AV contractor or an IT contractor, how do you get that message up to the business owner? That is, I think there should maybe be more articles about that for business to realise that they need to get the two talking. That's why there's this thing around that AV and IT don't. Back to the beginning, the collision of AV and there is no collision. It's only because they're not encouraged to work together.
Very important point. Thanks, Roy. Yes. Oh, good. We can throw it again. There you go. He's even further away this time.
My name's Tristan from London Business School. We've just opened a new building, and all our AV devices or IP devices. But we've got an AV team that are working in a new building but don't have any of that experience, that network experience. So I was wondering, are you retraining your AV guys, or is that being talked about? Because especially with remote management as well, that's something we're looking at a lot, and it's a different way of working for the AV team. And they're kind of asking the questions, can we have training?
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering if that's something you've experienced.
So when I had my appraisal last year and my update this year, part of my development is to go and do an IT course to understand, as I say, about some network technology, because, as you say, it's important that if the AV kit is going to sit on the IT network, that they able to understand a little bit, because it could be a risk, because I'm not sure who's doing the configuration. Is it AV that's doing the configuration because it's AV boxes, or is it IT? If it's coming from the AV, if the AV guys have to do it, then they need to know what they're doing. Otherwise, the impact is going to be, on the IT services.
Work team that actually, we've got SVSI, Dante, boxes, and they're all within the lecture theatres. But it's our AV guys that are getting the initial phone call, the first line support.
Yeah.
And they don't know how to ping devices or anything like that. That's something they've not traditionally had to do.
Yeah.
So it's just that challenge at the moment of going, we need to involve the AV engineers as well in their experience and possible training.
So something that I did recently, so Shure, the microphone manufacturers, did a Dante course for AV people. And it was an introduction into Dante, and they were talking about VLANs. They were talking about, default gateways, lots of IT terms. But they were talking to AV people. All the guys that went there, because anybody that's going to go to Shaw is going to be an AV person. There's not going to be an IT person. But more manufacturers should do that. I think that was good for sure to have done a Dante introduction, so that and as they still do it. If you go to Shaw's website, even if you're not using Shaw, it's still the understanding of how Dante works. They tell you about how you can interrogate this software that's out there, Dante software. It's Dante themselves ordinates, and you can use their software to manage the devices. So that's something that you can. But your AV company or the manufacturer that you work with should really help and support you. They should be the first people you turn to.
Are you working in the AV department, are you? What do you actually do?
I work in the AV infrastructure within the LBS. So I'm kind of the guy in the middle between the network guys and the AV guys. So it's just that challenge of getting the AV guys to a level where they can support the network devices, but at the same time coming up with sort of procedures of at what point do they then escalate to the network team. So what do they own and what do the network team own?
So a good example, like in my environment, is, as you say, if you get the base, if you can ping the device, if they teach you to at least ping the device. Once you can't communicate with the device, then there's a network issue. So quite often I would ping one of my boxes, and if I don't get a return, I then raise it with IT. And then sometimes ports get disconnected. Quite often I've seen in our meeting spaces where people go into the comms room and disconnect a port, not realising that there's AV kit plugged into it. Other times there's clash of IP addresses, they're supposed to give you a unique IP address for your piece of AV kit. They sometimes take that IP address and issue it to something else, so that AV kit stops working. But these are the things that, and that's from experience, you know, once you can do those basic things and say, right, okay, I can't communicate with it, the IP address doesn't seem to be right. I'm putting in the IP address that I've got listed for that piece of kit, but I can't get to it. That's then where IT needs to get involved. You know, I think that's clear boundaries between what AV does and what IT does. That's what we do in our business.
I think it's confidence of working in the environment, isn't it? It's freaking a lot of people out, actually. Every time we do an article on it, you know, you can almost feel the silence when you ask the question, you know. But it's just familiarity, I think, really, and it's crucial who gives the training. I think you put your finger right on it there, actually.
Yeah.
Hadn't realised that Shaw did that, but Dante very good, Augmented very good, technically very sound. It's just that, you know, they're familiar with dealing with an audio fraternity, but general AV, you know, we had this big debate just fairly recently on what training the industry needs in these crossover areas that are becoming really very important. You know, I still don't know quite, and people are quite slow delivering at the moment, but, you know, we're trying to, that's our next step on. You know, we've done the salary survey, and we've just done a training one, and we need to develop that and see where some of these openings need to be effective, probably. It'll be a year-long process, and then we'll see where we are. Yeah, good. Right then, thanks, Roy. I don't know how we do for time, but any more questions? I think we're probably there, are we? Are we okay? We can't throw the catch box. I'd love to throw it right to the back there just to see the reaction. You're looking very worried now, aren't you? This is the unpredictability of these sort of sessions, really. You never know quite what to expect. That's the thing. Anyway, thanks very much for coming. I hope that's been useful. Thank you to the legend that is Mr. Roy Salfarlie. Thank you.
Thank you.